couple of people have asked me if there is a video of the daylighting workflow that I showed in class. I didn't make a specific video for that, and I didn't record the class, but I do have, and this is in the assignment, there is a YouTube channel that we've created that is all about these simulation workflows. So if you go there, and this is linked in the assignment, type in daylight, you'll find a bunch of videos on the daylighting workflow. Still, we're beginners, so I figured, yeah, why don't I just go ahead and make a really simple one. So here's a little model that I've made. This is one we've seen in class before that I was playing around with. I decided here that I would just make a set of layers just for daylighting, and I just made my own site for it. So again, this is back to this refrain that I'm constantly making, that you really should organize your model so that you can do things like this. All I did was I had another set of layers that I copied that was for another simulation that I'd done, and I just used them again, but now I can change them and not affect any other work I've done. Okay. And you should always be like, let's just turn on the slide analysis tool. Remember that we have different ways of looking at this. And yeah, okay, this looks like it is going to be something that the site will affect. So if I'm going to go to the winter solstice, and yeah, both the wall on the east and the tree on the west will affect the daylighting that's going inside this building. So it's just something to remember, or to remember that's what we're doing, is we're always looking at different ways of seeing these resources. So there's two types of objects that we're dealing with in a simulation of daylighting. Things that are going to either block or reflect the sun. So let's go back and look at, so in other words, like I said, this wall is going to be interacting with the sun in the model, and so will this tree, but also so will the building itself and the glass. The glass is going to let light through it. The opaque envelope will block it. And so that's the first category, is things that are interacting with the sun, blocking or reflecting it. We also need, though, we need to decide where we want to be measuring sunlight. And so I'm going to make a floor here, but I typically make it a little bit smaller than the actual floor. If you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If we're, for one thing, I just don't want it going through the walls, because that could mess up my, if I have part of this surface going to the outside of the building, that will mess up my daylighting analysis, right? Because the analysis is going to be some kind of average, and I want to have only things inside. Anyway, you could do it to the edge. I'm just explaining to you why I did that. I'm going to add that here to this. No, actually, I'll just add it here. I'll call this work surface. Place that there. Okay. And I'm going to now then create a work surface, which if I go to the daylighting availability workflow, I've got by the way, just leave it on this lead 4.1 option 1. Next year you'll learn more about that, but right now it's just a way we're going to get a lux measurement. I have my climate file. We can see here that I have some materials already on some layers. Let's look what that is. We can see that the tree, this tree I added here. So there's a place you can add trees in Climate Studio, and these are just, I don't really like them, but they're modeled so that they don't have a lot of geometry, and therefore you can add a lot of them, and it won't slow you down too much. That's the idea, at least. And we can see that they added layers, material layers for that tree. So if I select the trunk, double click on it, I could change the layer here. Right? That's the basic idea. So I'm now going to add an area, and that's the work surface I was talking about. I just click on it, say add the area. I can decide what the sensor spacing is. I'm going to say every 3 feet. I like that. The sensor inset, that means from the wall, from the edge of the surface, how far in is the first sensor? 1.5 feet, kind of makes sense. And my work plane offset is 30 inches, 2.5 feet. That would be like for a desk height. You could decide where you thought your work surface should be. It's not really critical for this. We're just trying to, well, I mean, it is critical in terms of it being accurate, but at the same time, we're just learning. And so, whatever you thought that, if you just put it wherever you want that makes sense to you. So, okay, so now I have a work surface. Um, let's just run it. Seems like it should work, right? And I'll just call this first floor. So I'm running it here. Okay, so I'm going to go to wireframe. Looks like something happened. I've got 100% SDA, 100% ASE. You don't really know what those are. I think I might have mentioned them. Those are lead numbers, but let's go to the average lux. 39,000. Okay, does that make any sense? I don't know if I talked about this in class, but and by the way, why is it all red? It's all red because down here our range is 0 to 3,000. So if we want to make this something where we can see some variation, we have to go to, like, I don't know, let's try 40,000. And we still don't have much variation, and it's probably because, let's see, actually, maybe it should be. Yeah, so I got the color to change, but it's still pretty regular. And it's regular because this is a crazy huge amount of lux. And that's because, so for example, if you were in an office, your target lux would probably be like 300 to 500. So something's wrong here. And what's wrong? Well, maybe you already know. But the reason I'm showing this is because this is the typical problem people have. The thing that's wrong is that we don't have materials on most of these objects. So I'm going to go back to ghosted just to so I can see everything. And I'm going to come back to my, if I go to my workflow, I can click on the materials tab and it will come to this. Or I can just add this. If I'm using Climate Studio on a regular basis, I would add CS materials in the same panel with my layers. It is layers, it's just a different way of looking at them. And I can see, yeah, of course, I don't have any. So this simulation didn't know any of that was there. Even though we see it, just because we see it doesn't mean that the simulation is going to see it. By the way, remember, I can always just turn off my results. If I come to the results tab and click on this, deselect all. Okay, so now I'm going to add some materials. I'm going to come to my building, and I would always check and make sure. So I'm going to turn the building. Oh, actually, the building I think is this. Let's look at this for a second. So right, buildings is that. Topo is the ground. Trees are there. They already have materials. The opaque envelope. That's the opaque volume of the building. This is the glazing. And I don't have any shading right now. And then I have inside, I have the work surface. Okay, so that's all makes sense. Let's go add some materials. So for the building, I'm going to just, for this it doesn't really matter. I'm going to click, just make sure I have a material. I'm going to click the first one, some kind of brick from a Frank Lloyd Wright project. I'm not sure why they always have that at the top, but they do. I'm going to add, so I'm just clicking on, next to the layer that I want to add a material to. I'm going to call this grass. And you'll see there's a bunch of different grasses. What's going on here? Well, they all have different reflectance values. We can talk about that in more detail. I've mentioned it in class. So I'm just going to pick a grass. And then I need to put, by the way, if I was thinking, well, I'll just put one, let's say I had different, these broken up into, different walls. If I said, well, I'll just put everything on this top layer, that won't work. It has to be on the actual layer, even if it's a sub layer. So I'm going to add, I'll just do the memorial brick again because I don't really care. I'm just trying to get something that's going to block the sun. And then I need to add a glazing. I think I might even have said, so these are opaque materials that we've been applying so far. I'm going to come and add an exterior glass with dynamic shade optional. I'm just going to pick something that has a really high visible transmittance. Remember that we're only thinking about visible transmittance because that's the light we see, so that's daylighting. The U value and the SHGC are heat, and we're not talking about those right now. So I'm going to pick this one because it has a high VLT. Just I think I might have said to use that. I don't remember. I'm going to go to the shade materials and turn them off. And you can see now I have a graphic up here. It's a single pane piece of glass with no shade. If I change it to something that's double pane, I'll see 2 panes here. If I add a shade, I'll see the shade and it'll describe something about it. Right now, though, I'm just going to go back to my normal glass, my single pane of glass, and no shade. Say OK, or select. So now I've got stuff on the opaque envelope. The glazing is picked. I have the tree already has everything. Has materials for all its parts. I have stuff on this building, material on this building, and on the grass. So now let's see what happens if I run this. I'm going to name the other one. I'll just say 1. I think it already. Let's say no materials. And we see now we have a very different result. I'm going to go to wireframe. We're not worried about that. The SDA, by the way, is just do we have enough sunlight according to the LEED certification, and ASE, so we have too much. But now we're looking at a lux value, and lux is the amount of illumination hitting a surface. This is a work surface that we've created. So now this makes sense. And I could, if I wanted to, I could come change this range. So I'm saying that's only a graphic. Actually, I kind of like the 4,000, but no, I'll go back to 3,000. I can also turn on my values if I want to see the values. I can, scroll back and forth between those. I can sort of imagine what's going on here, right? I've got this area of redness is coming from it's direct sunlight from this opening. Then I'm getting there's sort of an area in the middle that's has less light. It's because I've got this wall here, and this window here is now shooting light to the back, right? So what would happen if I change my opaque envelope to something brighter? I'm going to put in some kind of white colored thing, white paint. It doesn't really matter what. Okay, I'll pick one. Here's a DuPont white. So DuPont's a company that this is a product we could buy. It's got a much higher reflectance value than the brick did. I'm going to select that and run this again. I need to save this. And so we'll see that we have a much larger amount of light, of visible light hitting the surfaces. And all we did was change the color, right? So between here and here, it's just a color change on the interior surfaces. Let's see. Go ahead and try some shading. So I have some that I think in here. Yeah, this is shading that I had from another. Now, in just this configuration right here, these side shades aren't going to do anything. I'll just turn those off, the east and west. We have a little bit of the southern shading here. Let's go ahead and I'll add that to this also. Let's make sure it's there. Yep. I of course need to add a material to that. So shading. Oh, I already have material on it. Let's try to run this again. I'm going to have to name this. So let's call that white. And so now we look at the lux values between with shading, without it. There is some change. Let's go ahead and make this. I want this right now. So we're at 10,000 here, and 13,000, 14,000 here. So that's a pretty big change. It's not very clear because of the. What if we do 4,500? Oh, it's wait. These are 13,000. This is still a lot of light coming in here. Yeah, that's getting to be a little bit more useful, right? So we see a change here in the colors and also in the numbers. So you can see how you would iterate and try to reach your goals by adding or adjusting your design, and then test it quickly with the simulation. Once you have these set up, you can iterate really quickly. I think one thing you'd want to check. Let's just turn off. I don't think that this wall and this tree are going to have a huge effect because we only have windows on the south side, but it ought to do something. So let's just turn them off. I'm going to turn off the building and the tree and run it now. Wait, I got to name this. So this was shading. And now this was no, I'm going to say no context. Go to my lux values. I'm going to turn off let's look at the colors for a second. And I can even just turn off everything now and just look at the simulation if I want to. So if I start with, so I had no materials, it was, obviously something wrong. Added materials, something more sensible. Made it the interior white, pretty big change. Added some shading. That made another adjustment, and then with no context, that's even more. Now that's maybe a little bit hard to see. I can see something happening there, but so the point is too here that at some point I need to decide what my ideal range is for this. And again, what's important are the numbers, but the range helps us. We're architects and we like visual representation, so this helps us understand what's changing by looking at colors. That's not bad. I wonder if we went even a little bit lower. I think that's a pretty good, graphic pictorial representation. But the point is, if I'm going to have these 5 in a series, I have to have the same range for all of them. I can set that range to whatever I want, but I want it to be the same so that I'm not changing the visual reference of the colors. Now, by the way, don't include these in unless you want to talk about them, you've learned about it, don't include the green and the yellow. You're just looking at the lux. You don't know yet if you haven't gleaned what lux is referring to, ask me. And that is the briefest introduction I could do to this workflow. Hope it helps. Let me know.